Alright, today we're going to talk about multiplying decimals. So in your table of content, you should put today's date, put multiplying decimals in your table of content, and then mine's on page 13. Yours might be on a different page. So turn to your next clean page. And at the top, go ahead and put multiplying decimals. Now, before I tell you the rule for multiplying decimals, let's review the rules for adding and subtracting decimals, because kids always get those two rules mixed up. They think the rules for adding and subtracting decimals is the same for multiplying decimals, and it's not, okay? So remember, the rule for adding and subtracting decimals, which you've learned in elementary school, is that you have to line up the decimals, okay? So that is the main rule for adding and subtracting decimals. You must line up the decimals. Okay? But that's not the same for multiplying decimals. Okay? I see kids do that all the time. They think, oh, since I have to line up the decimals for adding and subtracting, I'm going to go ahead and line up the decimals for multiplying too. No. That is not the right way to multiply decimals. So here's the trick for multiplying decimals. You actually pretend the decimal is not there. Okay? So that is the first step. Step one is to pretend the decimal is not there. Okay? Then you multiply like you usually would. And then the second step is you put the decimals back in. You have to count how many numbers or how many digits are behind the decimal. Okay, and that's where you put your decimal in your answer. You count how many digits are behind the decimal in your work, and then you put the decimal in your answer in front of that many numbers. Okay? Now that might sound confusing at first, so let's do an example together. So third step would be put decimal in answer. Okay? So let's do an example, and the steps will make a lot more sense. So let's go ahead and do 15 and 1/10 times 200ths. Okay. Our first step is to pretend the decimals are not there. So if we pretended the decimal wasn't here and it wasn't here, what would our number be? Well, our number would be 151 times 2, right? So let's multiply that. What is 151 times 2? Okay. And when I'm multiplying, I like to write it vertically. So then it's going to be 151 times 2. That's 2. 2 times 5 is 10. Carry the 1. 3. I get 302. Okay. Now, the next step is to count how many digits are behind the decimal. So we look back at our problem. How many digits are behind the decimal? I have 1 here, 2, 3. Altogether, I have 3 digits behind the decimals. This should say decimals. Okay. So I have 3 digits behind the decimal. So in my answer, my decimal has to be in front of 3 numbers. 1, 2, 3, and then you put the decimal here. So our answer for 15 and 1/10 times 200ths equals, oops, sorry about that, equals 302 thousandths. Okay? Let's do one more example. This time, let's do 8 and 25 hundredths times 1 and 5 hundredths. Okay? So 8 and 25 hundredths times 1 and 5 hundredths. So again, we pretend the decimal's not there. So really, this becomes 825 times 105. Okay, I'm going to write it vertically. 825 times 105. Okay, if 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 2 is 10, plus the 2 is 12. Carry the 1. 5 times 8 is 40, plus the 1 is 41. Okay? Remember, we put a 0 or an X because we're starting in the 10 spot now. But 0 times all these numbers is just going to be what? 0, right? And then we put 2 more zeros because now we're going to start in the hundredth spot. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 2 is 2. And 1 times 8 is 8. Add it up, and we get 5 here, 2, 6, 6, 8. Okay, 86,625, but we need to put the decimal back in. Let's count how many numbers are behind the decimal. 1, 2, 3, 4. So guess what? In our answer, we're going to have to put the decimal in front of 4 numbers. So our answer for 8 and 25 hundredths times 1 and 5 hundredths is 8 and 6,625 10,000ths. And that's how we multiply decimals. Pretend the decimal's not there, multiply the number like you usually would, and then go back and count how many digits are behind the decimal, and that's how many digits you put the decimal in front of.